Veronica Ann Roth. Veronica was born on August 19, 1988, in New York City and was raised primarily in Barrington, Illinois. Her mother, Barbara Ross, is a painter who resides in Barrington. She is the youngest of three children. Her parents divorced when she was 5 years old, and her mother has since remarried to Frank Ross, a financial consultant for landscaping companies. Her brother and sister live in Chicago area. Roth is of German and Polish descent. She married the photographer Nelson Fish in 2011. They reside in the Chicago area. Roth wrote her first book, Divergent, while on a winter break in her senior year at Northwestern University, and found an agent by the following March. Her career took off rapidly with the success of her Divergent book, with the publishing rights sold before she graduated from the college in 2010, and the film rights sold in mid-March 2011, before the novel was printed in 2011 April. Her first two novels sold over 5 million copies worldwide by the fall of 2013, just as the film based on the first novel was wrapping up.
Setting. So the setting of this book takes place in Chicago. In a time in the future, there are five factions. Those abnegation, candor, dauntless, erudite, and amity. The story takes place mainly in the dauntless, abnegation, and erudite compound. Each function is represented by different symbols, clothes, and traits. Dauntless is filled with people dressed in all black and have tattoos all over their body. They usually have piercing too. Just the sight of it will make you shiver. The wall of the compound are made of stone and it's dark as a closed closet door. The most magnificent room is the pit. The pit is underground, covered with rock walls and narrow paths. You can hear the roaring water in the river that's in the chasm. The Dauntless are all about bravery, so the whole structure is full of tricks, ledges, and sharp corners with no railings. Meanwhile, in abnegation, everyone is calm and organized. The people all over wear gray and are not allowed to wear accessories except for gray watches. No one is overthinking about themselves, so they keep everything clean and non-destructive to help others. There is no violence and arguments, and they are always very polite and generous. Gestures such as kissing and hugging are forbidden, so that greet each other they bow their heads to show respect. They do have a rivalry with erudite, with mainly they don't trust each other and think badly of each other. Lastly, there is erudite. Erudite is mostly related to intelligence and greediness. Erudite hungry for power rebels and fights against abnegation. The clothing always includes some blue in it because blue is their main color. They all wear thick glasses. Many of the people are doctors, librarians, teachers, and etc. The people in Erudite are super smart and have memorized the city map. They hold a big grudge against abnegation and want to take them over.
For the main characters of the story, Beatrice Tris Prior, the protagonist of the story, a 16-year-old girl who was born under the faction of abnegation, and later on chooses to change factions and serve under Dauntless, who she later learned to become independent, brave, and later on found her place among them. Tobias IV, a trainer for the initiates of Dauntless. He was also a stiff or the people of abnegation, and a divergent just like Tris. Christina, close friend of Tris and a fellow initiate in Dauntless. She has a loud personality. Eric, a former erudite, brutal, ruthless leader of Dauntless who is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve his goals. He is a major antagonist of the story. He is cruel, manipulative, and power-hungry. He also works closely with Janine Matthews. Janine Matthews, the main antagonist of the story and the representative of the erudite faction, who seeks to overthrow the abnegation and take control of everything. For the minor characters are Caleb Prior, the brother of Beatrice, who later joins Erudite. Marcus, Forrest's father and the leader of abnegation. Tori, the two artists who accompanied Beatrice on the stimulation. She helped Beatrice hide her identity as a divergent. Will, a friend of Tris and a fellow initiate of Dauntless, a good hand-to-hand fighter and the love interest of Christina. Al, or Albert, friend and fellow initiate of Tris and Dauntless. He is kind-hearted and can't seem to live with him hurting him, and can't seem to live with him hurting others. Peter, an initiate who likes to prey on the weak, the one who stabbed Edward in the eye.
Introduction. Everyone in this post-apocalyptic Chicago is a member of the faction you choose when you turn 16. Each of the five factions is committed to a certain ideal that, in essence, control every aspect of its member lives. Therefore, Beatrice Pryor will have to decide which organization to join when she becomes 16. Self-denying, abnegation, brave, dauntless, informed, erudite, sincere, candor, or cordial, amity. Beatrice decided to join Dauntless despite coming from the Navigation family, but it's far more difficult than it seems to join Dauntless. Trish is also needs to overcome her personal concern in addition to those of the other applicants. Additionally, she discovers that there is erudite plot to overthrow the Abnegation government when she becomes Dauntless. Rising action. The Dauntless initiation is a set of physical, mental, and bravery exams that determine whether someone is eligible to join the Dauntless faction. The initial trials involve leaping from a moving train into a building and subsequently off that building. The first person to leave of the skyscraper was Beatrice, who is now known as Tris. The initiation then held a series of combat events in which you engage in daily combat. Beatrice competed against Peter the Strongest. Initiate in the opening about she was easily defeated by him and suffered concussion and other served bruises. Nevertheless, of one initiate moderators named Four assisted her, and despite the fact that he was utterly mysterious, Four became her body. She overcome Mira with ease and second match. She defeated Molly in her most recent match, finishing 7th overall in the opening round. During the second round of the initiation, you were asked to estimate how long it would take you to stimulate facing one of your greatest fears. Trish entered her stimulation and found herself in a field being attacked by cows from all the sides with powerless on the verge of death. Trish overcomes her panic by calming down and recognizing that it was only simulation. She woke up in less than 2.5 minutes. She gave her the top spot in this initiation second stage. Trish became Forrest's friend and permitted her to complete his drain landscapes. The last step of the initiation, since it is very impossible to have only 4 fears. Four was given the nickname Four. The following day, Trish traveled across her own territory by herself. Her worries include heights, cramped spaces, and killing his mother and his father. It was almost as amazing that she only had 6 fears. As a result, she was given the top overall ranking in the initiation final phase. Climax. When the erudite created the simulation serum, they added unique mechanism to make sure that everyone who uses it takes turn being controlled by them. The Divergent, which includes Tris and Four as well as the other individuals, are only ones who are unaffected. The head of the erudite Janine located the Divergent and used them to create a new serum. They use it on Four and he begins to follow their others. Those people were not under control. Following action, Trish headed to Dauntless facility to rescue Four as she included Janine. When she got to Four, the erudite was using the simulation serum to manipulate him. She obeyed his command to put her rifle down. She grabbed it up after that and placed it to forehand. Four then directed it at her head. He was startled of open simulation by this, and they filled the compound together, heading to Amity. The only location they believed to be secure, Trish's mother was waiting for her. When she left the compound, since she had anticipated this would happen, she and Trish were shot at by numerous Dauntless soldiers as they rushed to the application complex. Fortunately, Trish's mothers had brought guns, so they were able to respond until they were totally surrounded. They were able to avoid the Dauntless soldiers. Trish's mother died after making a selfless sacrifice, leaving Trish alone. Resolution. At the conclusion of the novel, Tris and Four are traveling by train to Amity, a group of favored peace, along with Tris' brother Caleb. Tris realizes that she has changed into the factionless on that she is no longer has a home in the cliffhanger line of the book. I am no longer Tris the sophist, nor I am a Tris that brave. I suppose now I must become more than either.
For the conflict of the story, man versus society. From the start of the story, it is already represented that Triss is struggling with the system of functions, where she feels like she doesn't belong in it, in abnegation, and her personality proves it. She's a divergent, which means she doesn't fit perfectly into one of the factions, and she has the characteristics and personalities of other factions. The society in which she lives in is run around the system, in which each faction has its own role and function in the society. The structure of the functions was meant for harmony and not to have conflict, but that didn't last long. She obtains the wisdom to question the society, like she wants to make a path not just for herself but for all. It is a struggle for freedom and of choice of individuals. Point of view. First person perspective. The story was told from the protagonist's perspective and the way the readers experience or shares the happenings, thoughts, experiences, feelings, and etc. For the theme of the story, the theme of Divergent by Veronica Roth is finding one's identity, the quality that distinguishes a person from others, and the compliance or defiance within the place's laws. Divergent is a book about choosing who you want to be in a world full of unjustifiable laws, uniqueness, and weak-willed people. Most of the characters in the story are teenagers or young adults trying to find out their own identities, choose what kind of suitable trait to have, or which faction to be in. Just like how the knife or the blade symbolizes the whole story, Beatrice or Triss's ability to defend herself and cut through the challenges or obstacles that she encounters. It also represents the dual nature of power, which can be used for good and evil, the same way her faction is, and the things they learn throughout the initiation, honor or brutality. As Beatrice or Triss struggle with the consequences of her actions and the choices that she makes. The blade or the knife can also be used to not only defend herself but her friends and loved ones also. The knife or the blade should also be used with consideration, because just like today, people who are gifted with things such as knowledge, wealth, power, fame, at first, they use it for something that benefits or helps other people, out of good heart. But later on, they will experience sudden change of wind about their beliefs and use what they have for their own selfish motives. Aside from power, it can also represent the division of the factions, the ability of the knife to cut things, and the extreme violence and the damages it does if it is not contained or controlled. Along the division of the factions and the different personality traits that people have in those factions. Just like in Dauntless, where violence can be used for honorable choice of violence to protect the weak against those who prey on them, and the brutal side of it, where they take down those who are against them by any means necessary. Just like the cops and politicians, there are honorable ones and the opposite. They have the power to set things right, but some of them choose to use the power for their own ideals, abusing it and using it against those who stand in their way.